Hello, welcome back to another episode of the Doug Las Vegas Bets UFC Betting Show. Back here after a huge week at the White House. Came out with slight profit, although I'm destroyed about my boy Ilia Topuria. Sorry it took me a little longer to get this one out with that card being on Sunday. I just was being lazy, to be honest with you. It took me a second to get back into gear after such a huge event. But we're back for this fight night. I like this card. I love the main event. Kyoji Horiguchi, Manel Kape 2. Obviously their first fight in Rizin. Now they're back here in this high stakes, high level main event. Always love that. Also a couple great prospects in this card. A couple very live underdogs that I'm going to talk about. So without further ado, we'll get into it. I'll give you my underdog best bet, my favorite prop play on the card, and my 3 parlay legs for the week, as well as a couple other spots that I like. Without further ado, we'll start with that main event. Alright, getting into the main event first. We got Manel Kape versus Kyoji Horiguchi 2. The first fight took place 10 years ago or so in Rizin. It was a great fight. Kyoji Horiguchi took over late, started getting the grappling going, got the submission in the third round. I'm not going to put too much stock into that fight. I wouldn't overthink it. Kape is such a different fighter since then, and I'll start by talking about Kape. Back then, super explosive, athletic. He's always been that way. That's why he was so fun in Rizin. That's why there was so much hype around him coming into the UFC. But during that UFC run, I think he's really started to hone things in. He's gotten more comfortable in the octagon, and it's clear that him being comfortable is important, I think. You could say that he was too comfortable in the Pantoja fight, his debut, and then the Nicolau fight where he lost a controversial decision after hurting him because he didn't throw his hands enough, just felt too confident in what he was. But I think comfort has been his performances like Felipe dos Santos, where he's not scared to eat a shot and just let it go. He trusts his durability, trusts his speed, he trusts his power. Seeing him get all that going, and then he's coming in now off that first round knockout over Brandon Royval. I mean, I think this guy is a serious threat to the flyweight championship right now. I honestly think he's the best flyweight in the UFC right now over 5 rounds. It's going to be incredibly hard for anyone to beat him. On the feet, he's just so fast, so durable, so powerful, smart, calculated, and then when it comes to the grappling, his takedown defense initially is outstanding. It's very hard to get damage off or do submissions when you're on top of him. We saw Mokaev struggle with that, even though Mokaev got the win. I don't know if he would have over 5. It was kind of a weird decision. I like Kape a lot more over 5 rounds than 3, I will say. I think that just gives him a lot more time to get into his flow, get the damage off. I mean, even in his 3-rounders, like you look at the Bruno Silva fight, he really got going in round 3 after getting the damage going before. And I think when you're fighting guys that are a bit higher level than Bruno Silva, those extra 2 rounds to find the flow, really get going and find your timing can make all the difference in the world. So I'm very, very high on Kape's skill set. He takes on another incredible fighter here. It takes 2 to tango to make a great main event, and Kyoji Horiguchi is absolutely special. There's been a lot of buzz coming around him since he returned to the UFC. Obviously, he was in the UFC forever ago, near the dawn of the flyweight division, took on the great Demetrius Johnson in a title fight way back then. Eventually ended up leaving the UFC, went to Rizin, Bellator, back to Rizin for a little bit. But he's made his way back and put on 2 absolutely incredible performances, finishing Tagir Ulanbekov in the 3rd round, and then just styling on Amir Albazi, hurting him late in that one. Really got going, showed the pressure and the speed that he has at flyweight. He's an incredibly fast flyweight as well, and I was really impressed with the grappling against Tagir Ulanbekov. Ulanbekov's a tricky matchup, a really difficult guy to grapple, and he finished him by submission. Obviously, he hurt him first, but to be able to go to the ground and get the job done there rather than going to the ground being a mistake, which we've seen it be at times, he was able to get the finish. So this guy is tremendous. He's well-rounded. He's got good finishing instincts. I do have a few concerns, though. He's now 35 years old, obviously had the second UFC run, so he's been around for a long time. And we have seen him finished a few times around. We saw Sergio Pettis catch him with the spinning back fist. Saw Kaya Sakura get him out of there in round 1 of their first fight. He did get the win in the rematch. But that's not the point. The point is his durability against powerful strikers is something I'm concerned about and hasn't been really tested at the UFC level. When you look at Tigran Bekov and Amir Albazi, not only are they not the most powerful, but a big point in this matchup as I get into my pick here is these guys are great matchups for Horiguchi, especially with the power of hindsight. We see that his speed was the big difference here. Tagir could not keep up with his speed despite the size and length advantage. Amir Albazi simply could not keep up with the speed. But these are two of the slower flyweights. This is not Manel Kape. Manel Kape is probably the fastest flyweight. I think he's going to be faster than Horiguchi in there. It wouldn't shock me, but I don't think there's a huge difference. But yeah, I do think Kape is going to be the even faster guy here. He's younger. He's more durable. And when you give him 5 rounds to work to put damage on, I think he's going to land some good shots here. He can drop Horiguchi a couple times. He can land the more impactful shots to steal rounds. And he has the finishing upside. With all that being said, I think minus 160, minus 170 in that range is a good price. I'm planning to play Kape at that price. Pretty rare that I play mid-sized favorites like that these days, but I feel pretty strongly about Kape in this spot. I think he's one of the best in the world. And as much as I do respect Horiguchi, I think he is also an elite flyweight. I think Kape is the toughest matchup for him because of his the speed and the ability to negate the grappling, along with the durability. I mean, you look at a guy like Josh Van, even Josh Van as the champ has been dropped, has been hurt a bunch. We've seen Kape in these wars, he doesn't get dropped, he doesn't get hurt, and when he faces these guys like Brandon Royval, he wiped him out in a round, made it look easy, didn't go to war with him. So Kape, really, when he's on his game, I just think this guy's unstoppable. And when you give him 5 rounds to find that rhythm and flow, I'm going to have a real hard time picking against him against anyone in the world unless you give me a good enough price. I think minus 160 is a good enough price on Kape here. So I'm going to play him and put him in as one of the legs of my 3-leg parlay. We'll have him as the capstone on the night, if you will. All right, next up we'll talk the co-main prospect versus veteran battle as Navajo Stirling takes on Iwan Cuțelaba, who's fresh off taking out another prospect with a first-round guillotine finish of Umar C. So starting with Cuțelaba, talked about that finish. He's a wild man, a veteran. He's rounded out the skill set pretty well over recent years. Was able to grapple a lot more in the Ibo Aslan win, and obviously finished with the guillotine in his last fight. So 2 submissions in his last 3 fights. Always dangerous on the feet. Not technical. I was gonna say not very technical, but not technical. Period. He'll throw wild overhands. He'll get crazy aggressive. Had that the comical finish where he was playing possum, trying to pretend he was rocked over dramatically against Ankalaev, and Keith Peterson. What was his name? Kevin McDonald ended up stopping the fight. Just hilarious. Just always. Oh, you never know what you're going to get with the Hulk, Iwan Cuțelaba. He'll always have a fan in me. Navajo Stirling on the other side, very clean kickboxer out of City Kickboxing. He's going to have the technique edge in this fight. He's looked good through 4 UFC fights. Had, maybe a lack of finishing ability. He's coming off his first TKO win over Bruno Lopez. Although, I feel like at that point they were like, all right, man, come on. We're going to keep feeding you these guys until you finish one of them, and then we'll give you a step up. Because they were giving him, Tuco Tucas, Rodolfo Bellato, some of these guys with, questionable durability looks, and not the highest level, not the most UFC wins under their belt, to say the least. But he has looked good. I'd say he's a technical kickboxer, but the one thing that has impressed me about him is that he's coming to the UFC as a prospect, and you can tell that he's growing as an MMA fighter, not just a kickboxer. Offensive grappling isn't always indicative of having good defensive grappling, although I tend to think his defensive grappling is fine coming out of City Kickboxing. But it's a good sign to me that he's using grappling offensively too, just knowing that he's not trying to force kickboxing matches in an MMA octagon. He's comfortable being an MMA fighter, competing in all aspects of the game. I think that helps him be favored here. But at these odds, I'm still very, very hesitant. I haven't made the bet yet, but I'm very strongly considering an Iwan Cuțelaba bet. This guy brings chaos. He is could have a moment either in the striking or the grappling. It's easy for me to see Cuțelaba either landing a huge throw or takedown and getting on top of Stirling and Stirling reacting poorly, or him landing a huge shot on the feet and Stirling reacting poorly. We just haven't seen him face much adversity in the octagon, and Cuțelaba's a guy who's so likely to bring him that adversity. That being said, I do agree with Stirling being favored. I think he's obviously the cleaner technical fighter. He's going to be winning the minutes and could even have those big moments that I talked about of his own. So I understand why he's the favorite. I would set him as the favorite, but these odds feel a little wide, so I'm still sitting here considering a bet on Cuțelaba. I'd warn against putting Stirling in your parlays at the least. I don't have the most confident take or really a pick on this fight. I just say I'm leaning Cuțelaba as a betting side, but I find this just a very difficult matchup to read for me. Next, we got a couple struggling featherweights looking to get back on track in a fun stylistic matchup. It's Hurricane Hyder Amil takes on C-Rod Christian Rodriguez. Start here talking about Amil, and Hurricane's the perfect nickname for him. This guy is crazy aggressive, high-paced boxing. Had a couple disappointing outings in a row after a really strong start to his UFC career. So he came in, had the overwhelmed TKO of Fernie Garcia, and then just that wild brawl knockout in a minute over Jung Yong Lee. Took the step up and was able to get the close decision against a tricky William Gomi just with his constant pressure and aggression. Then took a tough early knockout loss to Jose Delgado, just got caught with that knee right up the middle and smashed with elbows. Didn't bounce back super well with the decision loss to Jamal Emmers too, where he slowed down late. Emmers is a good fighter though. Emmers is well-rounded. When he's on his game, he's going to be tough to outbox or out-wrestle. It just looked like Emmers was really on his game that day. But still not a typical Hyder Amil performance, which is concerning considering his age and that he was coming off a first-round knockout loss. So hope he hasn't lost too much, but I'm not overly concerned just because he hasn't taken a bunch of knockout losses, a bunch of damage. Tend to feel like it's just, an off night and then got caught. An unfortunate couple in a row leaves him in this tough position where he's on the brink of losing 3 in a row in the UFC. On the other side, Christian Rodriguez, C-Rod, was known as the prospect killer he is the prospect killer, I guess. He only beats undefeated upcoming prospects like Austin Bashi, Isaac Dalgarian, Cameron Simon. The guy's Raul Rosas Jr., how did I forget that one? We cashed on that one at plus 200. The guy's just done it over and over. Problem has been when he faces veterans, he almost always loses. Lost to André Fili's last fight. Another one we cashed on against him. We cashed on Fili by decision at like plus 400. I don't know how that was split, by the way. That would have been a horrific robbery. And then before that, lost to Melkizayo Costa and had the early guillotine loss to Julian Rosa. So the run up at featherweight has not been spectacular. Because you could also look at that Isaac Dalgarian fight, and I think most people gave the first 2 rounds to Dalgarian and would argue that he should be 1-4 in his last 5, and that's 1-4 in his time up at featherweight. Since he moved up because he was really struggling to make the weight at bantamweight. Still, he's just not a very large featherweight, so I was kind of concerned about the size when he came up, and it's definitely looked that way. I mean, André Fili was touching him with just more impact. That was the difference in the fight. Fili was longer. Fili was cracking him with more impact. It looked like they were in different weight classes. With that, this fight is interesting. Amil has a pretty good volume edge on the feet, although Rodriguez might be the more technical boxer. Might actually be a little more durable. I'm not really sure who's more durable here, because we did see Rodriguez get rocked a few times by Fili, but he's never taken a knockout loss. I tend to think he's a durable guy. And then the big question to me is the grappling. C-Rod has the grappling edge. Will he try to use it really? Will he get on top with it? I mean, we've seen him settle into striking matches before at times. And the size, I mean, at featherweight, it's more difficult to take these guys down. He's a very good defensive grappler. He's very good at surviving on the ground and sweeping to counter and things like that. But I'm not sure that Christian Rodriguez is going to be able to get enough offensive grappling going here to make a big difference. So I was hesitant on this one, but in the end, I settled on a prop play on this one that I like. So I think this is going to be the prop play of the week too, and it's going to be Hyder Amil by decision. I think he's going to be the more higher output guy on the feet, putting the pressure on. If C-Rod does try to grapple, Hyder's bigger. I think he can use that strength size to stay on the feet, push up on C-Rod in the clinch, push him up on the cage. I think he can land with good impact on his shots, and C-Rod can survive. So I think a decision is much more likely than a knockout. I think it's Hyder's main path to victory. So at plus 400, I'm pretty tempted on that one. I could easily see him winning the minutes in this one, as long as C-Rod doesn't get on top in the grappling. I tend to believe Hyder will be winning the minutes on the feet. So give me Hyder Amil by decision at plus 400. That's tentatively the prop play of the week. I haven't fully locked that one in yet, so keep an eye on my Instagram and Twitter, Doug Las Vegas Bets, for when I fully lock that in. But I will likely be having a play here on Hyder Amil by decision plus 400. Next, we got André Lima versus Kevin Borjas at flyweight in a matchup of two younger guys, mainly prospect on the Lima side. We'll call them both prospects. But I'm going to be honest, I'm just straight up confused at this one. What has Borjas done? There has to be someone behind the scenes who just hates Kevin Borjas. It makes no sense. He is 1-4 in his last 5, with just a decision win over Ronaldo Rodriguez, who hasn't fought since. He's coming off a brutal knockout, lost to Imanol Rodriguez, lost to Sumo Derji, lost to Alessandro Costa brutally, lost to Josh Van in his debut. I just cut him a break. You couldn't give this guy Matt Schnell before he retired? I'm sorry. I don't think Kevin Borjas is that bad a fighter, but I think he's about to be 1-5 in the UFC. I haven't even started breaking down the fight a minute in. This just blows my mind that they did this. I'll quickly go over the fighters. André Lima is a fantastic prospect. I'm super high on him. I believe this guy is a future top 5 guy. When you look at him, he's just continuing to grow at 27 years old, continuing to evolve the striking, coming off a late submission win where he got the calf kick going, just took him down late and got that rear naked choke against Daniel Barres. He's shown his well-roundedness against guys like Felipe dos Santos, got the good win, clean striking against Mitch Raposo that aged well. I really think he's a fantastic prospect who's looked good through his first 4 fights. Coming off a big layoff, that may be why they kept him, in the lower end of the competition pool, even though Borjas, I think, is better than his record shows. Just making sure that he is, acknowledging that he's still in that development stage of his career. This isn't a guy they're looking to rush to the top. And I think that's smart. I do think he'll continue to grow, though. I have very high expectations for him. Borjas, like I said, I think he's better than his record. The guy's a pretty good boxer. I loved cashing on the Ronaldo Rodriguez bet, but he's shown clear flaws in his game. He's clearly on the lower end. He's not a great grappler. He is, susceptible to the leg kicks, has a tendency to brawl, and when he gets stuck out at range, he got stuck against Sumo Derji, couldn't find any offense, just wasn't really pushing the pace enough either. So he's, I think he's a fine fighter, but he's a very flawed fighter, and I don't know why they keep giving him these absolutely nightmare matchups. I'm picking André Lima here. I do think André Lima is going to find a finish. I just think he's too good. Maybe the ring rust, he gets off to a slow start, but if he starts mounting damage on Borjas early, I have trouble seeing Borjas surviving 3 rounds with him at this point. Fun one here at featherweight as Melsik Baghdasaryan returns from over a year away here to take on Contender Series product Murtazali Magomedov. So I'll start with Melsik here. He's I've always kind of thought he's a better fighter than he's been able to show in the octagon. He's only had the 5 UFC fights. He's 3-2, so he does have a winning record. The Cuțelaba fight, I look back at that and I still kind of feel like he was better there. It just had the lapse, and Cuțelaba really took advantage. It showed the hole in his ground game. He's not a great grappler, not great submission defense. Just this guy is a pure kickboxer. But then the John Silva fight, I mean, yeah, he isn't ranked caliber, obviously. I don't think this guy is, was ever going to push for a title or anything. But I do think, he's always just kind of flown on the radar. He just hasn't been active enough to really get enough performances under his belt for people to know what level of UFC fighter this guy is. I mean, we've seen him beat the likes of Tucker Lotz, Bruno Souza, Colin Anglin, and then have a slip up. I can't call it a good performance against Josh Cuțelaba because he got finished, but he looked fine in it. And then he got smoked by John Silva, the only real top level fighter he's had a chance to show himself against. He looked horrible. So that definitely is concerning. But when you watch him fight, he's still incredibly fast, incredibly slick on the feet, hurts guys, hides that head kick well, and brings it up quickly. So I definitely think this guy's dangerous. He's a legit striker on the feet when he shows up in shape. But the ring rust is a little concerning. He did have a camp going because he was scheduled to face Brito back late last year. So, he hasn't just been sitting on the couch nursing injuries the whole time, but he has been injured, had to pull out of that one again. So that's definitely a concern here. Going against Magomedov, who comes in here 10-0, all finishes. There's a lot of reasons to be excited about this guy, but I'm pumping the brakes because in his second last fight against Brito, he got hurt early. I thought that was a really concerning look. The guy is incredibly aggressive and incredibly dangerous, shown well-rounded skills, although I don't think his grappling is necessarily looked fantastic. He did kind of struggle to get Brito down in his last fight. Brito jumped for the guillotine, which is why he ended up on his back for so long. So I do think he has a tendency to love the striking. I believe he goes by the highlight. Yeah, he does, because he likes to fight like Justin Gaethje. So, he's probably feeling pretty inspired right about now. A fun time for him to have a fight. But yeah, he doesn't necessarily always go to that grappling, even though he is a good grappler. You see the submissions and the ground and pound wins on the resume. I do think he tends to enjoy to strike more, which gives me a bit of concern because, like I said, Brito hurt him bad right away. And Brito, no disrespect, but that's not the highest level fighter. And as young as he is, and I always say I like to see young fighters overcome adversity, I thought that was good for him. I think it was more of a mistake on Brito jumping the guillotine after having him hurt that badly rather than going for the finish. He might have got him out of there. So with that, and the fact, another big factor in this is that Murtazali, I love backing these, quote-unquote struggling UFC vets against hyped Contender Series prospects at big dog odds. I've done it over and over, going back to like Dr. Nurgajai, fading him coming in when he was minus 200 or whatever against Brunson Ribeiro. He was minus 200, it was way more than that. But, we've seen it time and time again. These guys come off Contender Series with so much hype, and the UFC level, I don't know if it's the lights or the jump in competition. It gets to them even when it's not necessarily an elite level UFC opponent. And I think Melsik Baghdasaryan's dangerous enough to, give him kind of a wake-up call, touch him in the striking, maybe hurt him. Definitely got the speed advantage to make this interesting. If Magomedov doesn't get the grappling going, I think this fight gets real interesting real early, and I think Baghdasaryan's very dangerous early to get a finish. So with that, at plus 255, I'm making Baghdasaryan the dog of the week. He's a big underdog here, but I'm taking the swing on it. I think he's very live with his speed, his power, and the questions I have against Magomedov with him coming in, making his debut. I think there's value on this number, so give me Melsik Baghdasaryan at plus 255 here as the underdog best bet of the week. Next up here, we got Vinicius Oliveira moving up to featherweight, taking on short notice replacement André Fili. Was supposed to be Giga Chikadze, but unfortunately he had to pull out here. Fili steps in. We'll start with Oliveira here. He comes in off a pretty brutal loss. He started his UFC run 4-0. Had a lot of people pretty excited. Had some big power, some good moments at bantamweight, some pressure, had big size. His weight cut was a big talk on the last fight week. And then he got absolutely smoked by Mario Bautista in a horrific way. Started making excuses about his arm, about the weight cut, and then just moved up in weight. A thing that concerns me about him is I don't think he's getting any better technically. You can say, yeah, he's awkward, and the awkward, powerful striking has worked for him at bantamweight where he's a much bigger guy. But when you look, you see him posting these sparring clips, which that's weird enough on its own that he's posting a bunch of sparring clips of him beating guys up. But he's not sparring good partners. It doesn't look to me like he's getting the best looks in the gym. It doesn't look like to me he's improving really as a fighter over the course of his career, which is a big concern. And when you move up in weight, it feels like just a band-aid solution. So I have big red flags all over the place around Vinicius Oliveira here. That being said, Andre Fili on the other side, veteran, very skilled. I love Andre Fili for cashing that C-Rod by decision ticket against C-Rod, I should say, that I mentioned earlier. Had a lot of fun fights. That being said, he's dropped the ball a lot. Every now and then there's just this big letdown performance from Andre Fili, whether it was the Brito one getting knocked out in like a minute. Ige fight got knocked out in the first round. Melchizedek Costa fight just gets caught in this silly guillotine. And I mean, he is coming off two great performances. Looked great against C-Rod, like I said, had the boxing advantage, was stinging him at the end of those shots, and looked really good against a dangerous prospect in Jose Delgado, in a spot where most people thought he would lose. But if I've learned anything about C-Rod, or not C-Rod, sorry, Andre Fili, it's right after he puts on a couple great performances that makes you think, man, this guy's legit a dangerous featherweight. He's about to drop the ball massively. So I have in my notes for all my red flags around Vinicius Oliveira. For every part of me that wants to bet Andre Fili plus 225 here, my gut is like screaming at me, you know how this story ends. You know exactly what's coming here. And hey, I mean, maybe it won't. Maybe Andre Fili will look great and look value. I'm certainly not betting against him. I'm not overly interested in Oliveira. Definitely not on the money line. I think if you're betting Oliveira, you should probably have a look at the KO price. That's like plus 190, plus 200. I think there might even be value there. All things what I said about Oliveira considered, I do think his path to victory is a knockout here. I think if it goes to decision, I almost favor Fili. So the prop odds on this one are very weird to me. I might have a look at getting involved on the fight some way in there. Even Fili knockout plus 800. It's definitely tempting. It's got my attention. So stay tuned on my socials if you're interested. I may end up landing on a spot on this fight. But overall, right now, my take would be you can either bet Oliveira by knockout plus 190, plus 200, or Fili straight. I think either of those could end up having value. I think it's a relatively close fight minute-wise, but Oliveira definitely has the finishing upside. I also don't think it's impossible that Fili finishes, so that knockout, I wouldn't load up on that either. Definitely a pretty volatile fight in my mind. Here we go to flyweight, and another interesting matchup. Allan Nascimento taking on Mitch Raposo. I'll start with Nascimento here, the shootbox product, very dangerous submission grappler. Comes in having won 4 straight. His only loss in the UFC split decision in his debut to Tagir Ulanbekov. His problem's been activity, and he's not the best striker, but I mean, he just hasn't been able to get in the octagon enough really to make a push to get into these rankings here. But when this guy's on the ground, it's impossible to deal with him for most of these guys. I mean, Jafel Filo, skilled grappler, just got reversed by Nascimento and he took over. Jake Hadley was dominated on the ground by Nascimento. Carlos Hernandez finished it by submission. And, of course, most recently, Cody Durden finished by submission by Nascimento. So maybe he hasn't faced the most difficult competition in terms of that, but he's been submitting other grapplers out there. It's been pretty good to see, and I mean, it's just once he gets them on the ground, he doesn't look that good on the feet. He doesn't look that good with the takedowns, but once he's on the ground, once he's in his realm, he starts to take fights over. Mitch Raposo, on the other hand, he's 27. He's a prospect who is coming off a career best win over Azat Maxim, where he surprised a lot of people as a big underdog. He'd had a couple losses before that I think they look better on paper than they did in the cage. It was split decisions to André, Lima, and Sumuderji, which are two respectable names to lose to, especially by split decision. But when you watch the fights, those weren't split decisions. I didn't think it was even relatively close in either case. So I don't know what was going on there. But ignoring the judging and stuff, the skill set that he's shown has been growing a lot. I think a lot of people remember Raposo for two stints where he let a lot of people down, which was his showing on The Ultimate Fighter, where he was the first pick and ended up losing in the first round to Ludwig Schalainen. And then he went on Contender Series and got subbed by Jake Hadley. But he was a kid then, and then he grows. He's still a kid, makes his UFC debut, makes it to the UFC, and starts 0-2 against André Lima and Sumuderji. And a lot of people saw both of those and were like, all right, that's a couple chances. It might be done for Mitch Raposo. But he was a kid both times. I think this guy is still getting a lot better. He's really growing into his game and rounding out as a mixed martial artist, showing that, you know, he can be a wrestler, a striker. He can put it all together. Good striking in his last performance. So that makes this one a little difficult to pick. I do think Raposo's athleticism edge makes this very interesting, because if he can keep this one standing, just purely anti-wrestle, I think he's going to look good here. Problem is, I do think he's going to get caught up in the grappling exchanges. And I tend to think he's going to have a pretty hard time surviving on the ground. I mean, you look, it's been a while since he got a submission loss, but Jake Hadley did get him there on the ground. And we haven't really seen him tested by anyone down there, let alone someone the level of Nascimento, who dominated Jake Hadley, who finished him. I mean, MMA math doesn't always work, but we're talking specifically about the grappling skill set here. And Hadley subbed Raposo, and Nascimento dominated Hadley on the ground. So I tend to believe that Nascimento is going to be able to force some grappling exchanges, whether it looks awkward at the start or not. I think he's going to be able to get on top and either win rounds or get the submission here against Raposo. Still kind of thinking about this one a little more. Even that Raposo plus 800 by knockout's calling me a little bit, but I don't want to get too crazy with that. Nascimento is very good, so I'm definitely not eager to bet against him. But there are some edges for Raposo that's going to keep me from being overly confident in Nascimento in this spot as well. Good matchup of strikers here. Kickboxer Gastón Bolaños and high-pressure boxer Michael Aswell square off in this one. I'll go over Bolaños first. He's been, okay in his UFC run, I guess. Lost to Quang Lee and Marcus McGee, where he was dominated soundly, and wins over some of the lowest level fighters we've seen in the octagon with respect to Cortavius Romeus and Aaron Phillips. He's shown very little finishing ability, very little grappling game, decent kicks, got overwhelmed by the pressure on the feet by McGee. Just not a great run, and now at 33 years old, I have a hard time believing he's improving. Michael Aswell on the other side is 25. He's young. He's 2-1 in the UFC, so actually has 1-2, excuse me. So he actually has a worse record. But I think he's looked a lot better. Came in and had the fight up at 155 with Bolaños, where he was clearly just outmatched size-wise and still dragged it out to decision. Destroyed Lucas Almeida in that weird fight. It's his win, and he looked good. I don't want to take away from it because it's his one UFC win, and I think he's a good fighter. But it is worth noting that it came out, well, it didn't come out, but a lot of photos went around of Lucas Almeida's hand looking very injured. A lot of the betting line shifted drastically, and then the fight ended within 2 minutes with Aswell completely dominating. So, he did what he was supposed to do. He went in and dominated. And then most recently against Luke Riley, had a relatively competitive decision. I took that fight to go the distance, so glad he survived. He showed a good chin in that one, good pressure, and landed some good shots on Riley himself. which was good. I mean, Riley's a very good striker, so to be competitive in a striking match with him, I think it means Aswell's a pretty solid striker himself. Uh, with that, I think Aswell dominates this matchup. I don't think Bolaños has anything for him. I trust Aswell's durability a lot, which is part of why I took the fight to go to the decision last fight. So I don't think Bolaños is going to be catching him randomly. And then Aswell has the pressure boxing style that gave him so much trouble against Marcus McGee. So I expect him to kind of replicate something along those lines. With that, Aswell is going to be the first leg of the parlay. I think I forgot to mention, because I was just so caught up in my confusion in the matchup, that André Lima was the second leg. So the 3 legs will be Michael Aswell, the first leg, André Lima, the second leg, and then Manel Kape. You can combine those for around plus 130, which I think is some solid value. So yeah, there's the parlay of the week. Give me Michael Aswell. I expect him to get a knockout second or third round. Women's bantamweight fight here to kick off the card. It'll be the last one I go over. I'll be pretty quick with it. Karol Rosa versus Luana Santos here. Karol Rosa is the striker in this striker versus grappler matchup. We've seen her in the UFC for a number of years now, taking on solid competition. This is a fighter who's been there, done that. Not the strongest grappling, not maybe the top level of competition, but she'll give it she'll give a lot of the best fighters in the division a good go. I mean, just look at that Irina Aldana fight of the year where she was beating up that lead leg. I mean, if you want to strike with her for 3 rounds, you could be in for a long day. Eileen Perez looked good grappling against her, but only the more athletic, stronger grapplers of the division are really gonna be able to look that good against her. On the other side, Luana Santos here, she's up at bantamweight again. She's kind of bounced between bantamweight and flyweight, seems to have settled up at bantamweight here since her loss to Casey O'Neill, where it looked like she could have used a bit less of a weight cut. Did have the weight miss against Egger earlier in her run, but that was up at bantamweight. Not sure what happened there. But she is not only a good grappler, she's pretty dangerous too. She does well to get chokes. Got the rear naked choke against Maria Agapova, took advantage of her lack of grappling there, so she showed she can get that done, and then got the Americana against Tainara Lisboa. So when she faces these pure kickboxers, she has got it done by submission pretty well, and she also got that knockout in her debut where she just stood there and brawled with Juliana Miller and was able to get her out of there inside the first round in that exciting fashion, coming off the win over Melissa Croden last year, where she looked pretty good. So my pick for this one, I lean towards Rosa very slightly. I don't know that I'm not overly confident that Santos is going to be able to get on top and control and do something meaningful. I'm confident that Rosa has the experience. If she starts defending a few takedowns and mounting damage, it's going to be even more difficult for Santos to get those takedowns later on in the fight. So, I could see Santos having some success early. If she doesn't have any success early, I think it's going to go terrible, and there's a chance that Rosa takes over with the later rounds anyways. So give me Karol Rosa by decision here. Well, that's all I got for you today. Sorry it's a little later than usual. Sorry I didn't go over every single fight on the card. It was a slow start to the week, and I just couldn't get into the research for those ones where it was 2 debutantes as much as I wanted to. So I gave you what I could. Those are my picks for the card. Going over my bets, the underdog was Melsik Baghdasaryan at plus 255. My favorite prop so far is Hyder Amil by decision at plus 400. And my parlay was Manel Kape, André Lima, and Michael Aswell Jr. As always, if you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. It does really help me out. It helps me grow, trying to grow the channel as always. And go check me out on social media. I post every bet and the unit sizing there, so make sure to go check that out on Instagram and Twitter at Doug Las Vegas Bets. One final time, I really hope you guys enjoy the fights this weekend, and thank you for watching.